Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about the sensory system. So just a quick warning, I can't be too loud today because I am at home and people are doing stuff. So I'm going to come closer to the camera so you can actually hear me. So as I said, we are going to talk about the sensory system today. And this is still part of the neurologic examination. So recall that we have done the 12 cranial nerves and then we did the motor system. So this is part 3 of the neurologic examination. So to assess the sensory system, we need to evaluate different kinds of sensations. So we need to evaluate pain sensation, temperature sensation, vibratory sensations, light touch, and discriminative sensations, right? So let's start with pain sensation. So with pain sensation, what we need to do is we need to find a suitable sharp object. So a good one to use is like the broken end of a wooden cotton swab or any other suitable objects that would be okay for this test. So what we need to do is ask the patient to close their eyes and we just assess scattered areas of the body, but we make sure that we do it on both sides, okay? Because we need to test symmetric areas of the body. And we sometimes substitute the sharp end with the blunt end, so with the soft end of the cotton wool, just to provide a different stimulus and just for comparison as well. We need to apply the lightest amount of pressure possible just to elicit that stimulus, just to avoid, pricking the patient's skin or causing any injury to the patient. And then if there's any abnormalities, then we can test for temperature sensation. We do the exact same tests, but we substitute the stimulus. So we instead of using a sharp and blunt object or ends of the cotton swab, we can use a test tube, two test tubes, one filled with cold water and one filled with warm water, just for contrasting stimulus. And just to go over some of the medical terms. So analgesia is the basically the absence of pain sensation, yeah. And hypalgesia is the decreased pain sensitivity, and hyperalgesia is the increased pain sensitivity. The second sensation that we assess is light touch. So for this test, what we need to do is we need to get a cotton wool, and we ask the patient to close their eyes. And using a fine wisp of cotton, we touch scattered areas in the body. Try to do symmetric areas like we did in the first test. So we just ask the patient to respond whenever a touch is felt. So we can ask them to say now whenever they feel that that cotton is touching their skin. And let's go over some of the medical terminologies associated with this test as well. So there is anesthesia, which is the absence of touch sensation. There is hyposthesia, which is the decreased touch sensitivity. Hyperesthesia is the opposite, so that's the increased touch sensitivity. The third sensation that we assess is vibratory sensations. So for this test, what we need is a low pitch tuning fork. So we can use something like a 128 hertz tuning fork. And what we need to do is we need to ask the patient to close their eyes. We need to get the tuning fork, tap it on the heel of our hand, and place it on the interphalangeal joint of a finger, and also the big toe. And we need to ask the patient to, just ask them what does it feel like and let us know when it stops. The fourth sensation that we need to test is proprioception or position sense. So we could do this in the lower extremity by just imagine these are my toes. Imagine this is my foot, okay? So what we need to do to test this with the lower extremities is to grasp the big toe on either sides, and we just move it up or down. And with the patient's eyes closed, we need to ask if the patient feels that we're moving it up or down. And we do this several times. Repeat that with irregular patterns, so they're not just guessing the pattern of up and down. And we need to do that with the other toe and compare the proprioception with the other big toe. And then we can do that also with the upper extremities using the fingers. So we grab the finger on the interphalangeal joint, and we do the same thing. We move it up or down and ask the patient to which direction we're moving the finger. Okay, and again you do that on the other side just for comparison. We could also move proximally by testing the wrist, similar to the previous test. Just move it up or down. Okay, and ask the patient to identify the direction of the movement. The fifth and final sensation that we need to test for the sensory system is discriminative sensation. So there's actually 5 different types of discriminative sensations that we can test. So we can test for stereognosis, for graphistisia, for 2-point discrimination, point localization, and double extinction. So let's first start with stereognosis. So stereognosis is just the ability to identify an object when placed in the hand. So to do this test is we just basically ask the patient to close their eyes, put a familiar object in the patient's hand. So we can use like a coin, a paper clip, a cotton ball, or even like a key or a pencil or pen. And we just ask the patient to identify that object, okay, just by feeling it in their hand with their eyes closed. And we need to basically do the same test on the other hand using a different familiar object. So normally this can be done by the patient. So the medical term for the inability to identify the object when placed in the hand is called astereognosis. The next discriminative sensation that we can test for is graphistisia. So graphistisia is just number identification. So to do this test, we need to use a blunt object. So we can use like the blunt end of a pen, and we just, with the patient's eyes closed, we just draw like a number on their palm and ask them to identify what number that is. So the inability to do this is called graph anesthesia. The next discriminative sensation that we can test for is point localization. So to do this, we ask the patient to close their eyes and we touch the patient in one area of the body. So for example, I touch this and we ask the patient to open their eyes and point to that area that's been touched. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. The fourth discriminative sensation that we can test for is 2-point discrimination. So to do this, we need to use like the 2 ends of an open paper clip, and we touch the finger pad in 2 points and occasionally with 1 point. So basically what we're doing is we're alternating between touching the patient in like 2 points simultaneously or with 1 point, but in a regular pattern, so they can't just predict what we're doing. So normally the patient would be able to identify whether we're touching him or her in 2 points or in one point on the finger pad. And if so, what we need to do is to measure the minimum distance at which the patient can discriminate the 2-point touch. Okay, so we do this by reducing the distance between the 2 ends of the paper clip, and normally this should be under 5 millimeters on the finger pads. The last one is double extinction. So with double extinction, we just ask the patient again to close their eyes and we stimulate either like both sides or just one side of the body. So we could do that on the arms, the trunk, or the legs, and ask the patient if they're being touched in like just one side of the body or on both sides.